the Sensory Empower podcast. I'm Bethany, your host. I'm a holistic occupational therapist with over a decade of experience in supporting individuals helping to transform their world through sensory empowerment. This podcast is your guide to the transformative world of sensory storytelling, holistic tools, and empowerment strategies. So excited to just have a moment of reflection and just consider all the different things that we talked about during season 1 of the Sensory Empower the podcast. It was a really fun journey for me. There was a lot of diving into some of my favorite things: mindfulness, the science of the nervous system, different ways we process sensory information in our world, and really dig in a little bit deeper into some of the pieces like polyvagal theory and starting to kind of open the door a little bit with talking about the Safe and Sound protocol, which is a therapeutic listening program that is based off of the polyvagal theory. And I've just had so many really cool opportunities to work with some clients who have had some really big wins and reflections about nervous system calm and what it means in their body to be returning to a state of that ventral vagal state, that calm, that regulated, connected, leading with compassion state where we can have empathy towards others in that state. It's hard to have empathy if we are in a state of sympathetic, right? If we're in a state of fight or flight. And there's so many things going on in the world that can very much trick our system into perceived danger, and so much sensory stimulus all over every time I go out, I'm like, wow, we live in such an overstimulating world. Like, no wonder we as a society maybe are having a hard time returning back to that regulated state together. And when we're regulated, we have empathy and we can understand where each other are coming from different perspectives, different angles. And I think that whole beautiful theme of returning back to baseline is kind of the theme for this episode. And just some reflections that I have of working with clients who have had a lot of really intriguing changes, and some that have also been really, really interesting that they maybe have not quite known, but others were able to give the perspective and the feedback of the changes. And one of them was a recent client that I supported going through the Safe and Sound listening program that I have. And I always tie in a lot of nervous system coaching with that program because we need to know in a recalibration of where we have moved out of that window of tolerance. And because there's a lot of changes that can happen during that beautiful listening program, we want to make sure that our system is not getting too heightened. And so we always pause the listening during those moments. If we also drop down into kind of that immobilization state where we are dropped into kind of that disconnected, I'm bored would be an emotion that we might have that comes out. Again, a perfect place to pause. And this client really had a great time listening and felt very relaxed. So we also talked about like time of day. It's also another question I get a lot when I'm doing intakes with new future clients is, what does it look like to do the listening program? And we want to kind of notice your nervous system baseline before listening. And that's the coolest thing about the pre-assessments that we have you go through during the program, is to get a gauge of where your nervous system leads. If you do get a heightened state, is it moving and shifting towards sympathetic? And while listening, because it is filtered music and it can be kind of something for your system to be processing at that moment, which is the cool part of this program, is which way are we swinging? Are we swinging more sympathetic? Cool. We know that from some of those pre-assessments, and that helps us understand in that beautiful coaching piece how we can stop, listen, and integrate, and then use some really awesome grounding techniques, maybe having a dog sit on your lap. That's another one of my clients' favorites, is listening with a big dog sitting next to her and kind of have the dog's head on her lap, and really, really calming in those moments. So that's kind of a little bit of the logistics of the Safe and Sound protocol program that I offer for my clients. And it's 5 hours. And so I always love to educate that piece too, is this can take a couple months or it could take a couple weeks. And it's really based off of your nervous system response. We never want to push through to get the full 30 minutes of listening. We want to really, really tune in and have that intuitive knowing in our system of when to pause and when to take a break and then resume the next day. So our system can kind of recalibrate and let everything and all the magic integrate. So a lot of the coaching that we would do through the program is kind of brainstorming nervous system presentation. If we do have a moment where you're noticing heart rate is increasing, those would be times where we're pausing, as that could be a sign that we're shifting into that sympathetic state, starting to get a little bit charged, heightened. So those are some things to kind of consider with some of this programming. Some other things I get asked is, what should I see? What would be the thing that changes? What would I notice if it's working? And this is such a beautiful question. It is. It really is such a beautiful question. And it shows like how deeply motivated someone is in starting to build in that self-reflection. And sometimes it can be challenging. And I've noticed this piece too. If we are frequently in a state of dysregulation, it is hard to access self-reflection. Self-reflection comes when we are regulated. And that is like how I think about things in my life that I've needed to process as well. In moments in my life that have been really challenging, I didn't have a lot of access to self-reflection because there were times where I needed to practice using so many different techniques and tools to try to just calm down my system. I would frequently flip towards sympathetic. So heart racing, kind of more rapid thoughts would be kind of my swing that I would go to from a nervous system presentation. And if we're having really fast, rapid thoughts, it's hard to slow it down and go, wait a second, self-reflection. Yes. So if an individual's nervous system is really, really used to kind of being in a heightened state, frequent thoughts, pretty fast thoughts, maybe moving, jumping from one thing to the next, having a hard time focusing, those would all be possible observations or internal experiences that someone may be experiencing. That can be hard to access a moment of self-reflection. And that was the really cool piece and kind of full circle with this share about the recent client that I supported. Is her partner was there in the room kind of on the pre-assessment call and then on the post-assessment call. And it was actually really sweet. It was a birthday gift. But I was like, the Safe and Sound program as a birthday gift? Like, what a beautiful gift of nervous system regulation. Incredible. She, struggles with misophonia and auditory processing and auditory sensitivities and just heightened emotions frequently, and had like such a dramatic improvement in post-assessment scores. The thing that was really intriguing, and this was kind of the theme of that post-assessment call, was, do I notice a huge difference? And I've talked with providers, I've talked with some of my other OT buddies who've gone through the listening program, and sometimes it can be so subtle of changes that it can come out later. Oh my goodness, that totally was a shift that I didn't realize or put the connection to this beautiful therapeutic listening program having an impact on this experience. And wow, I didn't get as heightened during that. So some of the wins that my client had shared was, the first was significant reduction in having those moments where that sound just flipped the lid very quickly. So an overall reduction. Her partner was able to also give some beautiful feedback of the household, that there were 3 specific sounds, and I won't dive into them too deeply, but 3 specific sounds related to like hygiene, like brushing teeth with an electric toothbrush and things like that, that were able to now happen back in the house versus needing to be outside. And that was a really it was a really cute moment, because it was this like, wait, really? You're doing that back inside now? Like I didn't even hear you. I didn't even hear you. And that's been something that has facilitated dysregulation, big heightened emotions, and complete overwhelm of literally this terrible feeling in her ears for years. And that was the moment where I was like, oh my goodness, like this is the coolest stuff, because it's so incredible to see that ding moment happen in the brain with an individual. So those kind of like subtle, yet when we think about the whole dynamic of that household, a very profound shift. Freedom for all parties to be able to move through their world doing their hygiene things inside it with leisure. So a lot more leisure in general. And then one of my other favorite quotes from that call was reviewing how there was such a shift in emotional regulation when they had a little scuffle over, so just a little disagreement over something. And the husband actually explained, like a dramatic shift in being able to maintain a calm, composed conversation without a big heightened emotion in something that maybe they have in previous times have had larger emotions. So the power of polyvagal theory work and stimulating that beautiful vagus nerve, which again is our 10th cranial nerve that runs through our body and integrates into our heart and our lungs and our diaphragm. That's why the power of deep breathing is so profound. It also integrates into many of our organs. So that is our ability to understand and get the sensations of our body and letting us know what our body is feeling and what our emotions feel like in our body, which is that beautiful tie-in connection with interoception, which I know I've talked a lot about interoception in past episodes. And, when I think about the therapeutic listening program and just my experiences with it, overall, just nervous system calm. It was such an incredible piece for me to have in the moments and that specific time frame of my life. Very, very powerful. And honestly, that's what really keeps me so motivated for continuing to show up and continue to advocate for offering this program. It's been so beautiful to hear these reflections and see my clients grow and really truly like witnessing real change in individuals' real lives. I mean, those aha moments of what might seem as minute, of being able to have those hygiene activities occur in the house versus outside of the house. How powerful of a shift that will be. So as we really anchor into ourself and start to kind of slow down and think about self-reflection, we get to also send a very powerful message of safety to our nervous system. And that's kind of where mindfulness comes in those moments of being able to shift back into that beautiful ventral vagal state of our nervous system and notice in those really beautiful moments building those bridges and those connections to the brain from our body that are like the self-coach. Hey, I'm okay. I can handle this. And it really is so beautiful to have some of those moments. And I have another win that I want to share just about a story with one of the parents that I worked with. She came in really overwhelmed. There's a lot of challenge with transitions with her child, with constant battles, getting out the door, having things ready to go, big emotions, any sort of kind of pre-warning was not really working. And starting to shift the mindset and the perspective, we brought in the Safe and Sound protocol with her son, and it's a really beautiful music-based tool. And they have a really cool one now that I feel like is maybe a little bit geared towards pediatrics. So cooler, fun sounds like Lion King soundtrack and stuff like that. It's been really fun. And nice to hear that feedback from my clients as well, who really love like Disney songs and everything. Within the first week of listening, she told me, she's like, well, I think something's going on. I think I'm noticing a change already. So, her son had gone through, I think, about 3 hours, so 6 listening sessions at that point in time. They were very, very diligent in doing it every day. And for the first time, she said, our mornings don't feel like chaos anymore. She said, we can actually laugh on the way to school instead of crying. And I was like, whoa, like such a huge win. It's not small. Like that's life-changing. And that's the entire household, again, shifting from stress and overwhelm to this beautiful connection and joy, being able to access play in that regulated, socially engaged state. So it just felt so beautiful just to kind of see these sparks move forward and being able to then, because of more of a regulated nervous system, we then were able to target those higher skills. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the self-reflection piece. Let's dive deeper into executive functioning skills of pre-planning my morning and being able to go through my checklist of tools and things that can help my nervous system feel calm for my day at school. When I'm working with adults, talking a lot about how we can build in those morning routines to empower us by knowing what our sensory profile preferences are. So if we are a big proprioceptive seeker, like I need a lot of heavy work, deep pressure. I am building in then those morning routines. And I love to do that coaching with my clients on brainstorming those things that we can bring in as our toolkit that help really, really feel and provide and fill up our cup if we are a big sensory seeker in those moments. And then maybe having more grounding, calming, maybe not a stimulating input if we are presenting with more of a sensory sensitive sensory profile. So these are the things that just light me up and bring me so much joy and continue to, in these moments, like I had tears in my eyes yesterday celebrating a client who just discharged after a couple years, and the self-reflection that she's able to access and the ability to have reflections of using tools to self-regulate when upset, being able to practice mindfulness, noticing the different nervous system states within her own body. It just brings me so much joy to be able to support and provide this with my clients. And it is an absolute delight when we're thinking about more of those kind of regular routine-based tools. The cool thing about the Safe and Sound protocol is this is listening through an app. And so it is on your own listening, and I'm there to check in and support. And these are things that if you are interested and you've been maybe thinking about joining one of my, sensory self-care group calls where we do more kind of the educational side, we practice mindfulness, we go into EFT tapping, and I always save usually about the last half of the time together in our hour session where we learn, we dive in, we self-reflect, we dive into interoception and neuroscience and polyvagal theory. So that's another offering that I have for adults who are curious about learning about sensory processing for themselves. And the nervous system regulation program that I offer with the Safe and Sound therapeutic listening protocol. And if you're interested, please reach out. I would love to continue to just bring in the dialogue and share some client wins, because I think that's the best way to really highlight some of those subtle yet very profound, right? Which is like the dichotomy of life of how can it be subtle yet also so profound. And I think that's a theme that I'm noticing, and it's been kind of a consistent theme when I've chatted with individuals, is we don't always reflect on it until later. Like, oh, I'm at the, grocery store and this aisle that was really visually cluttered, and that flickering light of the fluorescence right at the end of the hall, and that loud whirring of the fridge in the back, that doesn't drive their nervous system into total dysregulation anymore. They are able to maintain a calm state and focused state to complete all of the things and getting all the things on their grocery list and being able to check out with ease. And that's the magic. That's the magic. So I'm just so excited to continue to dive into client wins. I'm so excited to see where it takes us. And I think in those reflections from today, just thinking about some of those pieces, if you have a story of your own where you have felt kind of a shift from stress to empowerment, I would love to hear it. Please reach out. Send me an email at bethany@sensoryempower.com. I'd love for you to share it because your story matters. And these are the moments where it's really, really so beautiful to be back into this space. I had to do a little bit of some brain healing, and my opportunity to reflect on my senses throughout that whole process has been quite an interesting experience. So stay tuned for some other reflections as well on that. But until next time, remember, you are not too sensitive. You are perfectly tuned into your body, and you're really caring very deeply about living with connection and empowerment. Thank you for joining me on this sensory adventure through Sensory Empower, the podcast. Remember, empowerment begins with awakening your senses. Subscribe now and embark on a journey of self-discovery and transformation. Until next time, may your senses guide you towards a life filled with peace, joy, and empowerment. Because true empowerment begins with embracing your senses.